the chat room. Hey, hey, hey. hey. What's up, Hexo?
What's up, guys? What's up? What's up?
Man.
Great stream today. Great stream.
We gotta redeem ourselves from yesterday. Not that yesterday was a bad stream. It was just it was like, you know, sticking bamboo up underneath your fingernails. I cut so many DMs last night, and everybody just, you know, I'll just let you know, guys, I answered your questions as best I could right now. And go check it all out for yourself and report back to me, because I can't really answer all of your questions. So just step with caution, and you know, nothing bad to say about that dev team and what they're doing, but just you know, you guys are do your own research, make your own decisions, and report back to me so that we can, you know, talk to people about it. But at this point, stop DMing me, because I don't really understand at this moment. So anyway, pull the bamboo out from underneath our fingernails, and here we are screwing up our algorithms for YouTube again, because we're switching our day up. But and not at anybody's fault, but we've been trying to get Dev Kyle on Discourse Syndicate for last week or so, and he had some personal business he had to attend to, and his schedule's slammed, so he gave us some time today. So we snatched him up and said, you know, we'll just make a quick stream and get it done and get him on and all that stuff. But so how was your Bitcoin slash yesterday?
Me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, we did it. Weren't we on live stream when it happened?
Well, I mean, afterwards, how was it for you? Did you just
I had a party? Yeah, I had everybody over. I had all my Bitcoin friends over. We were discussing about how cool Bitcoin was. It was a great time together. I don't have any Bitcoin friends, but for sure, if I did, I would have had them up.
Did you get on Tone's show and check it out for the rest of the day?
Yeah, I was one of the 75 other panelists there on the stream.
They banned me from the stream. I made a comment.
Yeah, I got banned as well.
Yeah, man. And you know what? I wasn't trolling. I just mentioned a little. They brought this up in the chat room earlier. They said, hey guys, you know, stop going out there and trolling everybody and throwing stupid comments in Telegram groups and this and that, and, you know, the hex rules kind of shit, you know. But I want to counter that by saying, you know, a well-placed, well-worded troll to timestamp something is useful. You know, it's got a use case there, and having some good words versus a, you know, hey, fuck you and leaving is you know, a good thing, I think. So there is productive and strategical trolling that can be done out there. So I just want to throw that. But anyway,
let's bring Kyle on. He's probably
I don't want to make him wait.
My body is ready. My body is ready. Okay.
So everybody, for those of you who don't know him, he's made a couple of YouTube videos. I know he'd been busy and out of running around moving and stuff lately, but he's one of the part of the development team for Hex, and we're glad to have him on, and we'll bring him up right now. Yo, welcome, hey, Kyle, to Discourse Syndicate. How you doing, bud?
Doing very well. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Smoking, man. Happy Bitcoin slash.
Yeah. That's giving me all these memories from 2017 when my non-technical relatives started getting into it. My phone was blowing up. I think my brother literally texted me 5 times a day with the Bitcoin price or Litecoin price, or, you know, this coin or that coin.
Yeah.
We were all pretty excited in 2017, I got to admit.
Yeah, we will. So I have one aunt who really has no business holding control of her own money. She asked me if I knew about a particular mobile wallet, and then 2 weeks later asked me if I knew how to recover the password for that mobbut wallet.
Oh no.
And if she should email the Chinese company that gave
no. But you know what? That's a legitimate question for a regular human being. You know, we laugh at it in crypto, like, oh, you didn't say. But I mean, a normal human being's like, they lose their password, they send an email, they get their password back, you know? And in crypto, that's not so. And that's one thing that I think that needs to be taught right off the bat was, hey, look, your most important thing is your keywords, your passphrases, your whatever, your private keys. You have to keep those safe. You have to keep those, or else you don't have those, your crypto is gone.
Yeah, and that was my advice pretty consistently. Was I think my brother first asked me about Bitcoin in like June of 2017. And I said, look, I don't know, man. I've read the white paper. I don't know about an investment instrument. I wouldn't do that because I don't know a lot about it, and it is highly technical, and you definitely don't know a lot about it. And that was the advice kind of over and over again was, I get it. There's this personal sovereignty thing, but with great freedom comes great responsibility. And if it's gone, it's gone. You will never get it back. It's more gone than anything else you could lose in your life.
That's true.
Yeah,
that is very true.
I know. Me and Hexologist were just talking the other day. I'm like, dude, there's the type of money that we're generating right now. I'm going to get a separate computer and put my MetaMask on a separate computer and do everything else somewhere else and just put it away. Just because.
Get the air gap thing going. It's pretty serious. And there's a podcast called Radio Lab that, gosh, this is sort of coincident with the 2017 rise. They did a spiel on the initiation ceremony for Zcash, where they had somebody hang out with like the Zcash guys who did the initial ceremony to generate the sort of root block for the whole Zcash chain. And they went through all these security procedures where they're just driving around trying to pick a motel with Wi-Fi, but they're choosing at random. They're not using their phones for maps. They have a physical map. And then they're just like, oh yeah, turn left here, turn right there, go up here. And still somebody somehow got into like their Google Hangout to try and listen in for any clues on any of the parts of the multi-party computation, the seed words they were using. Like it was kind of spooky and yeah, I don't know. Like it's the kind of thing that if it's sabotaged in a permanent, irrecoverable way. So for people who know, they take it very seriously. And for the layperson, it's like, oh yeah, but I'll just click forgot password. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
No,
yeah.
It definitely doesn't. I lost MetaMask one time. Yeah.
Yeah. So what would your like not saying how do you store your keys, but what would be your your some ideas that you've given to other people to store theirs? Or because some people like on my show always ask me, and I'm like, hey, you should store 30 different 30 different places, and I'm like, well, 30 different places, then you're definitely given that the probability that one of them is going to get taken and then it's gone from that one. So having one is also a problem in case that one gets destroyed or anything like that. So it's like, yeah, you kind of do have to have backups, but your backups are also giving you another way of somebody finding it or anything like that. So
it's true, and this answer is not going to be satisfying. So I don't have a good answer.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
I don't have a good answer, but I have an answer. So what I do personally is not really what I'd recommend anybody do, but it's sort of funny that we have this problem about how do we keep secrets in a way that that other people can't recover the secret even if they have part of it. And unfortunately, this problem comes up a lot in industry, like just normal technology industry. You have secrets, you have encryption material, whatever. So I used to work for Netflix, and we had to do this for like DRM keys. Like, how do you securely store them? Because you have these studio contracts, you're liable for huge amounts of money if you screw it up. And they have the same problems. How do you keep secure material secure? And there are techniques, but they're techniques that require a computer to do. So then you're back in the same issue. Like, how do you securely store 30 computers, each with a part of which any 10 could reconstruct the full thing? Like, it's fortunately it's turtles all the way down or to whatever.
It just doesn't. Yeah. I'm thinking like the steel, getting a piece of steel and just engraving it to like or something like that is like probably the best way, or burying it in your backyard or something, and you're the only one that knows
Just
why there's
hopefully,
a stick in the backyard that has, you know, your pet's grave. I think somebody said to do.
Oh, there you go.
The pet's grave that just, you know, it looks like old Rufus is in the back end, but it's actually your pet password.
I got my seed words on a piece of stainless steel that I etched on, and that went in the safe, and that's just the way I'm going to leave it, like that. So
yeah, that seems good. That seems good. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend anybody do what I do, because yeah, it's like written down on paper, and I'll get around to laminating it at some point. I'm not good. I'm not the right guy to ask.
Yeah, because I've got some piece of paper that I folded up and put in my safe that, oh shit, that's starting to wear off, you know, like where it got folded happened to be right where it was, like, oh boy. So so with we didn't get to, you know, you, Kyle. We want to know a little bit about your background. We know you're a developer. We know you've worked in Silicon Valley, or you've worked for companies of that type. You know, how long have you been a crypto dev? How long were you involved in the Hex project? Just kind of give us a little history from there on.
Sure. Let's see how much history is relevant. So like I said, I worked at Netflix, and one of the systems I worked on were the DRM systems. So there's a bunch of different DRM providers. They use different techniques that store keys. So I've been interested in professionally doing cryptography and security stuff for several years. In terms of cryptocurrency, I got interested through a total side channel. I was in 2016, I wanted to work on a secure voting application, so you could like vote by phone. So in doing the research on what had been written, like what's the actual technical literature on this problem, it sort of opened up the whole world of all these cryptography research papers. And one thing that a lot of them had in common was the idea of a bulletin board is the common term, but it's a blockchain. So it's a write-only public data store. And that's what got me into sort of the crypto space in general. I had read about Bitcoin, and I decided to read the white paper and see how much overlap there was with kind of this underlying technology of digital or distributed ledgers, and specifically the blockchain and how it achieved this sort of write-only public property. And then just by coincidence read that there were all these other cryptocurrencies and thought, oh, that's interesting. People have sort of expanded on this concept. So 2017, I just kind of went bananas trying to learn everything I could learn. Ultimately, that all sort of fizzled and blew up. And it sort of put it down for a while. I tried a couple of times to start writing some Solidity contracts, but it was sort of opaque and kind of aimless. So it's like things didn't work, and I didn't know why, and the tools were kind of crummy, and everything was very sort of DIY. And I didn't have a lot of free time then, because my first son had been born, and just, you know, I don't have time to futz with sort of technical difficulties, sorts of things. So I got much more serious about it through Hex, actually. So in February of 2019, I got turned onto the project by a podcaster named Chris Coney. He does the Cryptoverse podcast. And seems like a nice guy. I think he lost interest in the project itself, but that was enough to get me involved. And it looked interesting. And I thought, well, hey, here's a project that sounds simple enough. So if I want to take another stab at this Ethereum development thing and kind of learn, they have some code that's on a public GitHub. I can look at that. The sales pitch is very straightforward. So I imagine the logic is going to be about as straightforward as you get. And I was wrong. And it turns out it's incredibly in-depth and difficult to create the system that is Hex, but it was tantalizingly simple sounding. So that's what got me into it. The developer who designed and developed all the contracts is incredibly talented. There's a YouTube video that I haven't made yet talking about the security audit process, and unfortunately, it's tough to be the most qualified person in the room, because that guy has a hard time not just being like, you idiots. Like, how can you not understand my code? It's perfectly straightforward if you weren't total morons. Like, he had a really hard time remaining cordial for some of those things. So
it's a Hex crew.
Yeah, and it's not like I know every Ethereum developer, but this guy's really sharp and just an excellent developer and has a good head for design. So it's sort of easy to say, but I feel like I kind of learned from the best and got to participate and make code suggestions and like, hey, have you tried this? I did some pull requests against the public GitHub, and Richard was acting as sort of the broker, where he would just tell the guy, hey, like Kyle fixed it, so just merge his code. And that guy, for a long time, was a little bit hostile towards me because he thought I was being this jerk, just coming in and being like, take my pull requests, asshole. And that's not what was happening at all. Like, it was totally just like, hey, would this work? Just trying to learn and get involved. So I had this really great feedback cycle with him eventually, once we sort of, Richard was trying to be a good liaison, but once we cut him out and this guy and I could just talk directly, it made a lot of progress just for my own learning and everything else.
It probably was the new guy. You got the new guy kind
new
of.
guys.
You're the new guy coming in. Like, who are you? Who are you trying to come over here and put some code in here?
And then on top of it, Richard was the one relaying the message. So I'm sure that was like, hey, asshole, put this in.
Just merge it. What's the problem? Yeah, so it's like having the intern show up and be like, hey guys, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think I could do this. Yeah. That's hilarious.
I totally did this last year in my class. Yeah. So there was some of that. Hilarious. So that's how I got involved, and that really is my history developing for the blockchain. That is really, this was a big on-ramp. I learned from a guy who knows a lot and is not so taken with the idea of Ethereum development that he just says it's the best thing ever. Like, he has pointed me in all the bad stuff about it and all the things that make it hard and all the things that are very silly. And also is a sort of right tool for the job kind of guy. So he knows a lot about a lot of tools in the same way that I do, coming from a very diverse background for development. So that's been really helpful in learning. And then just going off and writing more smart contracts sort of associated with Hex or Hex adjacent. I've learned a lot there too. And there are a lot of good resources for people who want to self-teach and don't have the luxury of finding a mentor kind of by accident.
Right on. Hey, so we mentioned Richard. So you got involved with crypto like in 16, you said. Well, interested, and you started. When was the first time you saw Richard do anything, a stream or heard of him, or when was that?
So that would have been after I joined the Telegram group for Hex. I'd never heard of this guy. He was total unknown to me.
So you've literally known of him for a couple of years then?
Since 2019, so a year.
A year.
And
okay.
A month. Yeah, so I recognize the top hat. So I had seen a couple of memes on Twitter about the dude in the top hat.
All right.
That's all I knew about him.
Well, that's good, because you've only known Richard for a year, and you've worked with him in a very a close capacity, and you worked with him as a developer and a lead developer. So tell us a little bit about that experience. What's it like to work with Richard?
Sure. So I guess for context, so he and I, how did this start? So basically, so I started by writing a simulator for Hex.
Didn't you find a problem or something?
Yeah, that's right. So it was a problem that other people had mentioned, but I guess didn't prove. Like, they just sort of asserted that this is a property of the code as it's written. So I wrote a simulator, and the simulator, I spent a lot of time trying to model kind of the distribution of Bitcoin across all users, and then try and simulate what happens if there's this uptake rate of claims, and if people stake at this rate, like what happens at various staking lengths. Honestly, to try and find a good strategy for myself, because it's like, this is a pretty complicated thing. And I found this issue where short stakes beat long stakes. Like, you could just keep recompounding your Hex by doing a 2-day stake and then unstaking or ending your stake. You get a bunch of Hex back, you restake, etc. And I guess I was able to present that in a way that Richard believed, in a way that other people weren't able to do, because he can be a bit combative. I mean, he's a smart guy, and if you're going to tell him he's wrong about something, you better be able to back that up.
Yeah.
So I convinced him that that was the case, and then we ended up working together a lot on sort of just spitballing ideas of how to fix that. So I got to work with him in kind of a business rules design capacity, a system design capacity. We talked a lot about trade-offs because we did come up with some ideas that worked, but were not good. Like I think one of the things he was talking about for a few months is that we came up with something that worked relatively quickly, but people who get in day one make 1,000 times what the people who get in day two make. And it just keeps happening from there.
Right,
So like
yeah.
day two people make 500 times what day three people make. So there was sort of a product design element, there was a system design element, and then what are the business rules that we then codify in a smart contract that make this so? And then how do we prove that? So there's like several steps. And my experience was positive. Richard, we had this is almost an inside joke that I'm now giving away, but he says it sometimes. He says things that should be easy as fuck, or yeah. And there were so many things that he's like, oh yeah, we just do bam, 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 EAF. And it's not EAF. None of it is EAF. So we've joked about that for a few things, like the return of EAF. If we just build this for Hex, EAF. Yeah. So it was a good experience. He is a very smart guy. He's very resourceful at finding good real world examples to try and model. So that's one thing that I find very attractive about a biz dev person or a product development person, is when they don't think they have the best, innovative, never been tried before idea and it's just going to moonshot. It's all rooted in what works for millions or billions of dollars already. So the whole AA system, I think I talked to him about my participation in the EOS launch and how their system worked. And he said, oh, well, $4 billion went through that. Let's just do that. We looked at their code. It turns out the code that ran the EOS launch was kind of shitty and did a bunch of dumb things and had features that didn't actually do what you think they did. But it seemed to work, so sort of cloned that idea. One of the first attempts at doing the longer pays better was this thing called net asset value investment. So you can get like a pool of money and you buy in at some share rate, and then it in turn buys other assets, stocks or bonds, and then the next person who buys in has to buy your ROI. And you can always sort of calculate what you get in or out for, but it has the sort of 1000x, 500x property that we wanted to avoid. So again, it's modeled after a real thing that really exists. Lots and lots of money is in it, but doesn't quite have the right properties. So he had this great process to me of finding real financial instruments or real products that already have been battle tested. In terms of, there's a huge payoff if you can figure out how to game them. So let's just copy those, because the evidence is they're not gameable. So that was very rewarding. He can be a bit crass and a bit defensive and combative and like, just do it the way I'm telling you. But you do enough back and forth and you can poke holes and stuff and he'll listen. If you find that something doesn't work or just isn't going to have the outcome that he wants, he'll listen and pivot. And that's how we came up with the system we have.
Well, I've always noticed that about him too, is that when he discovers that somebody's got a good point, or there is something out there that has changed his mind, it pokes holes in him, and then he kind of releases, and then he's he pivots. But most people, or most folks that come up against him, they're like, they get so butthurt from his initial reaction to him thinking they're wrong or whatever, that they just go away, or they run with their tail between their legs and they can't take it, Yeah.
I mean, he used to be a Bitcoin maxi before. So it was like he realized that maybe Bitcoin's not the end all be all for cryptocurrencies. By the way, I was going to ask you, Kyle, what do you think about what are the chances that Hex gets built on or gets put onto a different blockchain, let's say like TRX or ADA or anything like that? Do you think that that's because I mean, a lot of people are upset with, like, maybe not upset, but they see the Ethereum blockchain getting kind of slow and trying to do a couple of transactions, and it's like, well, now I've got to, wait 2 hours. Sometimes it gets really clogged up, and then
and I haven't seen it, but they're talking about fees too. People are like, fees. I haven't seen any.
The fees are pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I haven't seen any massive fees, but I've heard some people talking about it.
They are. Man, there's a few questions in there. So with regard to fees, so I've noticed that the gas costs to get your stuff done in a reasonable amount of time has been going up. So that there is more taking place, or maybe we're just in some cyclical thing. Where it just takes a lot. So it used to be you could get a reasonable number of transactions done within a few minutes at like 2 Gwei per gas. That's 2 billionths of an ETH per gas. Just today, I think it was 10 times that to get like a moderate rate transaction. So something's been happening, and it's been 10 Gwei or 12 Gwei. Over the last week. There usually are quiet times, which is when I try to do any transactions that I need to do. I happen to be up early, so like that's a good time usually, but these days it hasn't been. So I don't know what's up there. I totally take that critique, and for a lay person, that would be a problem. So what's the likelihood that Hex will move? I think if there is a good reason to believe that one of those other blockchains has the security properties of Ethereum and can create a better user experience, however, what it, sort of in a hand wavy sense, if they can do a better user experience, for example, reliable transaction timing or callbacks so that you can notify somebody when their transaction's done, because right now that's all kind of janky how it works on Ethereum, that would trigger moving the project. Now, all the state that is necessary is stored in the contract and is queryable. So you could lift the project and put it on a different blockchain. Now, so there are basically 2 forces in tension there. One, I think Richard talked about this on his stream with the guy who does the side chain development. Seemed very receptive to the idea, but they were talking about this idea of the value is attached to the ticker symbol. And I think that they were talking about all of the hard forks that happened and how the bulk of the economic energy stayed with the well-known ticker symbol. And so like ETH is considered the fork, whereas Ethereum Classic is the classic, but it doesn't have the right ticker symbol. So ETH wins. BTC has the ticker symbol, so it wins even over Satoshi's vision. Can't help but make the joke because not knowing again. So I didn't know who Richard Hart was. I had no idea who Craig Wright was. But then somebody who's no longer in the community just mentioned what his proof was of him being Satoshi, and I said, well, that's trivially, demonstrably not proof that you have those keys. It's like, well, oh, he's a liar. Oh, there you go. That's all you need. So I kind of derailed my own point there. So basically, there's two forces in tension. You got to stick with the ticker symbol because that's where the economic energy is. That's where the familiarity is. But the user experience on Ethereum is really bad. So if you want mass adoption and another chain says, oh, hey, we're like Ethereum in terms of all the security properties, and we have these extra features that make mass adoption easy, like easy integration with Visa cards or with whatever, mobile phones, then it might tip the balance in favor of moving. The data is all available, so you could move it. The chains you mentioned, I think, have implementations of the Ethereum virtual machine because they recognize that they're playing second fiddle to the most popular smart contract platform. So you wouldn't even necessarily have to change code, even if they had like optimization. God, even the Hedera hash graph has an EVM proxy, right? Like that's the new kid on the block that tries to do a different DLT. It's not a blockchain, but they still support Solidity in the Ethereum virtual machine because it's so dominant for development. So yeah, I think it could. I don't think it will, because the economic energy and familiarity is with the ticker symbol, and that is an ERC20 token. But it could. And
Okay.
yeah.
A lot of people are wondering about the Ethereum 2.0. What what will happen with Hex at the Ethereum 2.0? Like when it because it's going to be a hard fork, correct? It's going to be a hard fork when they.
So what I've read, I'm not a good authority on this, so I'm just going by what I've read. Is that it's going to be in phases. They know it's experimental, so it's just going to be a completely separate chain. You have to do basically a deposit of your ETH1 to get Ethereum for ETH2. Then I think they're going to do, once they feel comfortable that that is secure, if memory serves, the second phase is where they try and incentivize people to move. Again, with the details kind of notwithstanding. And then I think they invoke Ice Age or something on ETH1. So then it becomes infeasible to stay on it. So for Hex, again, the state of the contract is all queryable. So you could forklift it onto another chain. ETH2 is going to be a different chain. I mean, that's one thing that we know about ETH2 is they said it is not intended to be backwards compatible or cross that boundary back to ETH1. It's meant to be entirely
so it would be the same type of a move, the same type of a forklift move to go from ETH to ETH 2.0.
Yeah. So let's see. So what would you have to do? You would have to get all the state out of the ETH1 contract, pick a snapshot date, essentially, again, so that you'd have the state of all the Bitcoin claims, you'd have the state of all the stakes, you'd have the state of, let's see, AA would be over because there's no way it's coming out before November. Yeah, so you would just get all of the state. That would take quite a long time because you'd have to do tens of thousands of stakes worth of state, store it off chain somewhere, probably produce a proof of some sort that is the state that anybody could verify at a particular block height, and then pre-populate an ETH2 version of the contract with that state. You'd probably have to get it re-audited. This is sort of, I'm just thinking out loud because of the question. You probably have to get that process audited to make sure that you could reproduce that proof. So if I take a snapshot of the state, I generate a hash of it or some proof that this is the state and this is the only state that can generate this proof. Add some methods to the contract to be able to pump state into it, because I'm assuming you can't put like 5 gigs of state data or something in a contract deploy. Deploy the contracts, upload the state, then extract the state from the ETH2 version, generate the proof to say, look, the proofs match, the state is identical. Have that process audited by security people, and then you can say, okay, this is a full clone, state intact and everything. I think that's what you'd have to do.
Okay. Links. A lot of people have been asking me, what about ETH2? What happens at ETH2? And I'm like, I have no idea, to be honest with you.
5 years out, so don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, there we go. That makes me a little bit more.
Yeah, so, I think littles live there. It's taking forever for them to develop it. It's an incredibly hard problem, so that's not a criticism. And then to be sure that it works is going to take a long time. It's like clinical trials, right? Like it takes forever to prove that something is safe for other people to invest their life savings and try and do DeFi and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Now here's back to you personally. I wanted to get a little bit more info from you out there to everybody. So there's a lot of rumors about devs and how they get paid and how they get compensated and and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but how does that process work for you in Hex? Did you get paid? Are you part of the team making some Hex divs? I mean, it's up to you to answer that question, but you know, how did that work for a dev?
So I'm happy to answer that question. So my tack for all of my work on blockchain stuff is to be totally honest, even if that is not to my advantage. So I have not been compensated for anything I did for Hex. All of it was done ahead of time for free with no promise of anything in return.
You heard that right here, guys. You heard that right here.
It's a
Dev Kyle is broke.
Luckily, I've got Silicon Valley job, so this is totally fine to just be a hobby for me.
That's pretty awesome, dude. That's pretty awesome. And thank you for doing that, man.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's a product of interest. Now, the main dev who worked on the contract in the front end, whom I spoke about earlier, he is paid. I don't know the details of that, but I know that he is paid.
Okay.
And there were a string of other developers that worked on the project, and for various reasons were fired or disappeared. They also were paid to do that. So I've worked with the Hex business guys and the Hex mobile app. So I helped the original team put together the smart contracts. I built the prototype for the Android app and gave that to them and say, here you go. I don't have time to like do this full time. So Michael from Hex Business reached out to me, asked if we could do this QR code thing. I gave him a prototype for an Android app, wrote some contracts to help solve the problem that I think he talked about on your show about mobile wallets not being able to interact in complex ways. So I wrote some contracts that could be interacted with in a stupid way, but still achieve the ends. Gave that to them. They wrote me into the distribution contracts as to collect dev fees. That was not agreed upon beforehand. They told me they were going to do it. I told them that's not necessary, but they did it anyway. So I am compensated for all the Hex business stuff, but not because of the deal we made. I gave them everything, and then they just went ahead and paid me anyway.
And I just want to let everybody else out there know that this wasn't coordinated, because we did have the Hex business guys on yesterday. And you know, we didn't coordinate with you to try and pitch it or anything like that. We just thanks for we didn't even know that you were part of that. That's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. So it gives a little more credibility to the whole program, if you know.
Somebody in the comments is asking you, what do you think about, what are your thoughts on Uniswap and how it helps Hex, how it limits Hex and Uniswap 2.0? What are your...
Oh, that's a great question. So I put a YouTube video when I was unbelievably exhausted, so it probably didn't come out right. So Uniswap is fantastic. Uniswap is a great idea, and it was executed really, really well. So the problem with DEXs is that they attempt to mimic what centralized systems do. So centralized systems can have an order book. You can implement an order book in a variety of ways. So my first crypto project that I worked on wasn't directly related to cryptocurrency itself. It was noticing that there were these massive arbitrage opportunities between coins, but also between exchanges. So the first project that I worked on concurrently with another friend of mine from Netflix, because he noticed the same thing, we both wrote programs that would compute arbitrage trades across exchanges. So it integrated with the APIs of a bunch of different exchanges, Poloniex, Kraken, Bitfinex before they kicked all the US users off, Bittrex, and would just sort of scrape their order books. So order book structure is pretty well known. It's very efficient to do in a centralized way where you have just one database that stores orders. It can be represented in a very efficient way in memory if you control the computer with all the data. DEXs attempt to mimic that, which is not good because you have all of the problems of the slowness of transactions and making decisions. How do I want to phrase this? If you decide you want to make a trade, somebody else is likely to decide that they want to make that trade also. And then you have to compete with each other and do a second level of kind of game theory of what am I willing to pay to get my version of the trade executed first because of gas costs, right? Because you can't actually force it. It's not like you send both transactions to Binance and then Binance just decides who called the API first. It gets broadcast as a transaction. So somebody else could front run you. Somebody else could just decide coincidentally, but pay a little more gas to incentivize the network to take their trade first.
Yeah. Speed pass.
Yeah. So, and because of that, it's not attractive. So people just go to the centralized option because it's fast. They get that hit. They get to just participate. You log on and you say, oh, look at the state of the order book. I want to do X, Y, and Z. And it just happens. And then you log off.
Yeah.
With a DEX, you have to watch it. You have to see, did that go through? Did that not go through? That might take 10 minutes. I'm bored now. So like you just leave. Uniswap gives you the property of the instant interactability, or the time to interaction is 0 because there's always someone to trade with because you're just trading with the computer. And you can set timeouts, like whatever I don't want to wait more than 2 minutes. I either want it to go or not go. And I want to know in 2 minutes. so you can safely choose your interaction parameters. The fact that it's there's always someone to play with, I think is the phrasing that I used in the YouTube video, it is what seems to be the attractive feature of centralized exchanges. I know there's some, for people who are very serious, the order book is better because you can look at the thickness of the order book. You can play tricks by like showing a massive bid wall at a certain price and then taking it away. I had a chance to talk to a friend of mine who worked at Netflix, but before that, he worked on a trade desk for Deutsche Bank. So he was like a bond trader. And so he talked about all these tricks you can do with order books, all these things that you can do, and that are little games to play if you're like an advanced trader. So Uniswap doesn't have that, but most people don't want that. Most people want to get on, make their trades, and then leave. And Uniswap has all of the good parts of a DEX, so non-custodial, it's decentralized, censorship resistant. You can add arbitrary coins to it. So if you have a pet coin, you can add that. You can add liquidity, so you can kind of play passively by just being a liquidity provider without, putting actual coins at risk. You can monitor all the stats that you want through the Pools FYI site, or you can just trade and then be done. And that's kind of the core set of features that somebody wants. Now, how does that interact with Hex? Well, clearly it's been positive for it being an exchange that can't tell you they won't list you. It adds transparency, so you can see, for people who want to say it's a scam project, well, now the most popular exchange will show you if there's wash trading, right? Because like that's one of all the coin listing sites, they have all these centralized exchanges, and they have reported volume and actual volume. Like, why are those different? Oh, right, because some of these, they just do wash trading. Yeah. And that you can tell when that's happening. So Uniswap adds some credibility because of its transparency and decentralized nature. It builds on the idea of Hex of being a decentralized system that anybody can build on, anybody can interact with. And you can, I think like hexdex.win is a forked version of the UI that actually cuts some features, because there's some features in Uniswap that are a bit confusing, or it's not clear what's going to happen when you use them. So they just cut those out because you can make a simpler version of the user experience. And the Uniswap guys, all they can do is gripe about it. Like there's no censors. Now Uniswap v2 adds a bunch of features. It's probably going to suck a little more in terms of the decentralization. I think maybe Richard talked about it on a recent live stream. They have this, option to siphon some fees. So they'll probably turn that on. I don't know that that's the worst thing, because again, if it's all in the contracts and you can build on the contracts, then that's really all you need. And if the downside is limited, which I think they do have like a hard-coded limit for what the maximum fee that Uniswap is going to take, then at least it's predictable. So it may be a little crappy, or the VCs or have tried to figure out a way to take some of the pay, but they're adding features. They're making it more modular. There's a little bit more sort of exercise left to the user that we're going to have to do, but that also gives you the opportunity to use all these great new core features, like the ability to make real oracles, like on-chain oracles. That's something that we've run into a lot, is that all these other DeFi systems use off-chain oracles. I mean, it's not truly censorship resistant or decentralized. I know I'm rambling a lot, but it was a big question.
You're good. No, yeah, you're good.
This is
like, it's especially like it's stuff that we'd actually need to know. Like, people ask me these questions all the time, and I'm just like, bro, I don't know. I have no idea. So it's actually nice to hear it from somebody that knows what they're talking about, so I can go back and tell people.
And we got a lot of smart guys in the community. Crypto Coffee's one of them. Patrick, Firebun, yourself. And, we like to hear the details from guys like you. We hear it from Richard all the time. But, it's good to hear the rest of the community, people who are involved in the project. They're actually, hey, look, this is what's going on, guys. This is how this is built.
If I can get on a soapbox for just a second about the oracles thing, because the
Let's
DeFi,
hear it.
what we've found several people have been working on various aspects of trying to do DeFi with Hex. So I think Richard's talked about like margin trading or lending. So like I've looked into that stuff, and it is ridiculous. So all these systems, so Compound and Maker and BZX and even DYDX, there's a few kind of golden calves in the space. One of them is Maker, which I didn't even know about this. Coffee had to tell me about it. Like the reason that DAI became unpegged from the dollar was that they had basically a catastrophic failure. That their whole system of off-chain oracles reporting price, and then having a governance council that can unwind the system state happened because they just guessed wrong on the collateralization parameters. So the human intervention part is like should be the big asterisk after all of the sales pitches of these products. Like it's decentralized, big asterisk. It's censored. You know, we're doing DeFi, big asterisk.
Yeah,
like because it's really not. I mean, there are too many human decisions that have to get made that can be made wrong. So like there was the Maker fail, and reading their white paper. So their white paper and Chainlink is the other golden calf. Everybody swears by Chainlink, but Chainlink, for people who don't know, Chainlink purports to be a system that does trustless oracles, but they don't. They're not an oracle. They are a query oracle broker. So you have some information that you want for your smart contract. You submit a query with the service level agreement parameters. So the things like data quality, meaning like with an error, with an error case, like plus or minus 5%. You submit like a timing parameter, and Chainlink matches you to off-chain data sources that agree to provide that data. And then they'll aggregate the results of that off-chain data and then return you a result.
So they're leasing oracles.
Yeah. So they offer a marketplace that off-chain oracles can offer their services. So they act as sort of a broker, and then they take a fee. So that's just not what it claims to be.
Yeah. No.
Right? Like you're participating in a marketplace. It's almost like insurance. You aren't picking the provider, right? Like the insurance company is picking the providers, and then they just give you
whatever they want.
Yeah, and then they charge a fee. They can be turned off. They could, all their providers could just get like cease and desist orders. Like, hey, the Department of Justice decided that we're going to look into this Ethereum thing for indemnity purposes. You may want to stop providing data to these, DeFi contracts because they're acting as financial instruments, and it's over. And now your Chainlink's gone.
Yeah, kind of like cloud mining too.
Yeah, cloud mining is a similar problem. These guys screwed up. There's this other system, Kyber, that is a huge liquidity provider. But all of it, you have to like send an email to a guy to turn you on, and it just it really belies what I got into the whole space for, which is that you have public databases. Anybody, it's permissionless. Anybody can write to it, and that gives you a lot of power to do interesting things totally of your own volition, like without checking with anybody. And that's just not what is happening.
So let's talk about that for a second. I mean, all of us got into crypto for the same reason, mostly the same reasons, same mindset, I guess, get rid of the banks, DeFi, currency that's not the dollar, that's not anything else, that's not controlled by anything else. Everybody can use it, privacy, all those things. We were all attracted to crypto because of that.
Credit reporting.
So let us know, your feelings about how Hex changes that, fits into that. I'm calling it revolutionizing the revolution, because crypto has steered away from that, and it's not what it wanted to be. It didn't grow up to be what it wanted to be, and it's kind of morphed into the old currencies, or really nothing at all. At this point in the game, crypto to me is really just baseball cards. It's trading cards. It is not doing what it was intended to do, and we're all just trading baseball cards right now and hoping they go up in value. My opinion.
Yeah. God, as a kid, I had baseball cards, so I'm remembering that sensation. Opening
I mean, that's what we're doing right now. There's really no use case, and all the use cases are just pie in the sky dreams at this point. How does Hex change that? How does Hex fit into all of our visions of what crypto should be?
So that's a really good question, and I think my answer is different now than it would have been 6 months or a year ago. So Hex, when I first got interested, I thought, oh, here's a very clever idea. So we have this is a currency whose inflation is not based on block rewards, right? So like many cryptocurrencies are based on a chain, and the way that you get chain participation is by issuing block rewards, and that's meant to incentivize. And then, as happens with Bitcoin and all the other ones, there becomes sort of a secondary game of creating blocks successfully to get the reward versus participating on the chain to do chain things. So transferring value versus verifying transfers of value. So Hex is doing something interesting in that it's got an issuance policy that's going to be codified in a contract that's immutable. So it has an inflation rate, period. And then the only thing left to decide is who gets that inflation. That's also a very clever idea, is that since you have to distribute it and you want it to be in an efficient way, that's where you put the incentive for individuals to act in a way that is in their best interest. So you can choose, you stake, you burn your coins or lock them. That was a change during design from lock to burn, but you burn them now. So they get burned, and that has some, I'm not gonna there's so much history to I tend to go on tangents. So it has an issuance policy, it's codified, it has a system to distribute that issuance that's very, very clever, and can create sort of relative inflation rates. So your inflation rate that you experience is different relative to someone else who makes different choices about their stake lengths and what they want to hold sort of liquid to spend however they choose. So I thought that was really interesting, and maybe you could build on top of it, maybe you couldn't. There's people talk about like, oh, well, maybe that's going to be the new global reserve currency. Probably not, for a variety of reasons. But the clever part was that it really leaned in to this idea of a decentralized system that just was going to do what it does. And you can participate or not, and you can choose how you participate, you can choose when you exit. So the thing that has changed for me, for my answer in the last 6 months, is seeing the ecosystem that was already kind of there. So like Uniswap is already there, but starting to connect these pieces to start building out a much richer ecosystem that you can interact with, and seeing the enthusiasm of people building on top of Hex. Like it starts with stat sites, but then the games popped up. And so people have built engagement through these games. And then Hex Business, there a couple other things are very game-like, but again, talking to the head guy, he has a vision for something that's much broader than that builds on Hex as sort of a substrate in the way that Hex is built on Ethereum as a substrate. That you can build out more sophisticated things that maintain these properties of voluntary participation at the level you want to participate, with off ramps and on ramps, through Uniswap and through, in a sense, we're getting the benefit of the easy on ramps to Ethereum, because that's been blessed by various governments as something that you can just buy for fiat. So you get this very nice property that you're not necessarily isolated to your little bubble of believers. You can have tendrils out into the other parts of the blockchain and of the crypto space, and you can just keep building in an additive way. You don't need to carve off and create your own thing. You don't need to self-isolate. You don't need to be insulated. You can just be there. There's all this hate against Hex. Well, then get some and sell it down if you think it's a scam, or tell your friends not to, but then if they do, what are you going to do about it? You can't report them to the authorities, whoever that is. You can't get it delisted because it's not listed anywhere. You can't cancel culture it. And so the more that people get excited and want to build interesting things, they can. And so my answer now is that the way Hex fits in is that Hex plays by the rules that it claims to play by in a provable way. And the attitude of the community is to build things in that way, that it's all open, decentralized with voluntary participation. It's very clear what the on and off ramps are. Even the games aren't scams. Like, they tell you the rules and then they play by the rules. You can look at the contracts. It's all open. There's no on-chain, off-chain hybrid bullshit. Pardon, I know swearing's okay, but I'll try not to do it too much.
You're good.
There's so much. Even CryptoKitties has an off-chain component to do the genetic computation. That was another thing that I thought was like, oh, this is really cool. But then it's not fully inspectable, right? So Hex is different because it's really embodying the principles that Richard lays out as important. So he's consistent. The project is consistent with those values, and the people who have come and built on it are consistent with those values. So I think we're building out based on a set of principles that are good. And so everything that's been coming out from the community is good and honest.
Yeah, I think that too. I've seen a lot of people in the community that it's all pretty honest people, and like people that legit want the best for everybody else. And it's not like these others where it's just like, yeah, give me that money and that's all I care about. It's more of just like, giving to the community. It's more of a community effort. And, and I think like my thoughts at first was, oh, it's just because of the referral link. That's why everybody's playing nice. But then like, as you explain it and how I've seen it, it's more of like people are trying to be like, why aren't we propping each other up? Why are we, naysaying each other? And, even with the games, a lot of people hate the games, there's all polarizing, but, it's like, what do you care? They're going to build up on your project. Like, that's what you want on your project. That's how you know it's a legit project. If people are building on top of it, Ethereum, it's nothing if you can't build on top of it. It's just kind of a smart computer kind of program. Other than that, what do you use it for if nobody's building on top of it? It's just
Well, even the maker, like all the DeFi stuff, again, the illusion becomes shattered when it's like, oh, we had a 20% price drop in one day. Oh, your system broke. I mean, so now it's unpegged and it can never be repegged, essentially. So seeing, like you said, seeing what people build on top of it, but even people who hate the games, just then don't play them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The rules, you don't have to participate.
And then like the other thing, you see the community coming together and working so hard. For instance, and not to toot our own horn, but this show project that we put together here, we're not making anything off of this. We're just bringing the Hex community out from the chat rooms and putting them on YouTube so that they can, talk about their positions. People like you, just coming up here, anything that we do make on the show, we're going to give back to the community way, as we're going to donate to the big payday party. And that, so everything that comes into this show is going to go there. We're going to do something at the big payday party in Miami. But and Hexologist, he shows us link and stuff on his show, but the man works every single day on that show, every single day, Mother's Day, you name it, and he's basically giving back, because I know that his referral link stuff is not making him a living or anything. It's just some nickels and dimes here and there. But I mean, the whole community is coming together and doing things for the project, and that's what I like about Hex.
And the referral link, actually, this is another great example to me of sort of one of the values or the principles of the project being enacted. It costs people nothing to use your referral link, and in fact rewards them for doing it. Like the giving you 10% for using a referral link.
I thought that was big, by the way. That that's you're actually making money off of that. Yeah,
right. None of that was in the original plan. So going to Hex history, so this whole thing was sort of iterative. Like, oh, we got these referral links. Well, what stops people? Like, why would people use it when they can just not use it? Or why not just
Right.
Why not just this? Why not just that? It's like, well, just reward people for using it. So now there's incentive, and we control the issuance. So just issue more.
Right.
Like nobody has to lose. It can all be win-win.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
I think it's hilarious that people that don't like Hex think that that's such a problem. Like with just printing, printing your own, you guys are just printing your own money. It's just like, yeah, well, that's what Bitcoin does, guys. Where do you think the Bitcoin thing comes from, or the Ethereum? It's like, it's all
down and
yeah.
So I got
it's very funny.
One of our smarter guys, Patrick, he was on the show here a week or so ago, and he sent some questions, and he wasn't able to make it today to the show. But I was going to throw some stuff out there. He wanted to know if you could explain from a dev point of view, what are the benefits, and explain the good accounting function, and what are the benefits that it might have, tax benefits, that kind of stuff. Could you explain that?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So tax benefits, it obviously depends on what your tax code is, but you can basically stop the clock on your stake. So that's the benefit. So there's no so you don't continue to hemorrhage from the late penalty. You basically set the date of the end of the stake. It's relatively complicated how that happens in code, but essentially when you go to actually end your stake, that's the only way that you can generate your hex, meaning that it just remains burned when you do good accounting, as opposed to ending your stake, where it actually goes through all the computations and then says, okay, here's how much you put in and here's how much you get paid, and then we subtract out your penalty, and then you have a final number and mint the final amount to you. That ought to be a taxable event, depending on your jurisdiction. I think in the U.S. that will be the taxable event. Good accounting really just puts a marker on your stake and says, basically stop on this day, and so then it just stops. Like the time keeps going forward, and you can do the end stake at any time in the future, and it will notice that you put this flag in a particular day and say, oh, okay, so we're going to calculate as if you had stopped on that day instead of whatever day it is today. So that's the benefit of the good accounting function, is that you can defer earnings or help a buddy out if they lost their keys or misplaced their steel token thing with their seed words in it.
Now that brings a question up for me. Now you said, or help a buddy out. Why is the function available to anybody other than, hey, I need some help. I can't get to a computer. I don't have a computer. I'm in jail. They're dead, whatever. Other than some of those reasons, why is that function available to anybody? And I mean, I hate to put this out there, but let's just say there's a humongous stake sitting there and it's dwindling down, and somebody just comes in and hits that function just to stop it, because that's going to all the stakers as it
is. So there's yeah, this might be more technical than you meant to ask.
Okay.
So
everything's more technical than I mean to ask.
Well, yeah, like I said, it's deceptively simple. It sounds like, well, why would you do that? Let that guy bleed out. But wait. So when you start a stake, shares are issued to the stake. So stakes are entities. Let's just think of those as entities. They're associated with your address, so you can control them, but they exist in data within the contract. The amount of interest that you get paid for a stake is based on your relative size chunk of the total number of shares on a given day. So let's say you have two stakes, A and B, and you are staking across 1,000 days. Every day, when you end your stake, the system goes back to the beginning and then checks every day. You had 1% of the share, or 1% of the shares on this day, 0.5% on this day, 1% on that day, and then accumulates your inflation payments and then pays you out at the end. So the only way to get rid of shares is to either do good accounting or end stakes. So your 1% of all shares doesn't check whether those shares are on stakes that are late. It's just against all shares. So if that first guy, say stake A is a 1-day stake, so now it's late. As of day 2, it's late. And that person just forgets about it. They never touch it again. And it's late, and it's late, and it's late, and it's late. Those shares remain in the total. So if you're the only 2 people in and you started with the same number of shares, so every day you have 50%. So we go back through at the end of your 1,000 days and we count every day and say, okay, you had half the shares on day 1 and day 2 and day 3 and day 4. So you're only getting half the inflation when you should be getting all of it for everything after that first day. The other guy, when he does his final in stake after, day 3 years later, he notices, ends his stake, his stack has been nuked. It's going to go all to the penalty pool. But all of the inflation for which he got half the credit on 999 days is gone. Nobody gets it because he's not credited for it because it's past the end of his committed time. But his shares were diluting you for your stake the other 999 days.
Because they were never removed. They were still in existence. And when the end stake function happens, those shares disappear.
Right. So on day 1,001, when the shares reset, his shares are gone because he ended.
That makes sense.
There's a calculation you got to make. Is it worth X% of that person's stack per day versus how much they're diluting the pool of shares for inflation? So there's an incentive to do good accounting in that you'll get diluted less, and the dilution just disappears. Nobody gets it. That is gone. It's burned. It's eternally irrecoverable. So there's a trade-off. You are both incentivized to get those shares out on time. The person who's going to bleed and the person who's going to be diluted to clean up the system state that was created at the beginning.
That makes sense.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So letting a stake sit there and just dilute the pool is not necessarily in the best interest of the ecosystem of all of the stakers.
Yeah, it may not balance out, and particularly if it's a very large stake that represents a substantial number of shares. It's like, actually, we're some number of years in, inflation is actually substantial every day, and it's just gone. Some piece of it is gone forever. So then there's a counter incentive here. Let's say you don't want that to ever hit the supply, right? Because that is inflation that doesn't happen, that reduces the effective inflation rate of the currency. So that would be a reason to keep it in if you wanted.
Just depends, I guess.
It depends. There's a lot of things like this that are just like, one hand it's this, one hand it's that.
Like you said, it was. It seems so simple when you look at it straightforward. You're like, oh yeah, why would I don't do good accounting function? These guys, what are you doing? But yeah, that totally makes sense why you would why it's in there. I guess that's kind of the first time I've heard it explained that.
It is the first time I've heard it. So that brings me to another question that's on this list. It says, what can or might the share rate do? And this is, of course, your speculation they're asking for here. Rate due between the 18th and the 21st of November. So obviously right across the day before the big payday, the day after the big payday. And that kind of coincides with what we're talking about. So what do you see the share? I know you ran a lot of different test case and algorithms and whatnot to see what would happen. Give us your averages on the numbers or what you saw.
So I modeled a bunch of different possible realities, just about claim rates, about stake rates, and we're not behaving in line with those things, and then that's fine. I mean, that's the point. They're estimates of what people will do or won't do. So it depends a lot on what big payday is in terms of the percentage of your stack that you get paid. For people that that question has a very technical answer. Basically, the day after big payday, a bunch of people are going to end their stakes. They are likely to double or triple or maybe even quadruple their total stack. That is going to be directly reflected in the share price. So the
Okay, let me
share
stop you
price-
real quick. I don't want to break your chain of thought.
That's fine.
But so you and I had talked before about maybe, the thought, the general consensus is that you may double your stack. Right now, we're all seeing in our staking chart, we're seeing maybe triple your stack.
Mhm.
So that obviously is dwindling as more people stake. And then the thought is that the more stakes that come in because we're thinking, at big payday, people are going to take all this liquid hex that they have and say, oh, I better stake now and get my part of the big payday. So that's more than likely. I'm thinking that's what we're going to see. And then at that point, boom, our big payday starts to dwindle and maybe we make double. So we're looking at triple now, but we may end up at double. So I just wanted to just, mention that as you're getting into this.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I was getting there in a very circuitous way. So
okay,
it's even very aggressive staking models of like 80-90% stakes, meaning that people are just staked 80 or 90% of their stack at all times. It still roughly doubles somebody who's staked for a year. So if somebody's staked on day one for the full year and they end the day after big payday, they should double their stack, which will which will cut the share rate in half. So if it's, what is it, like 97 now, it'll be 48 or 49.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it is. But so I posted a couple of charts of one of the models that showed this, and it shows like year one, it's very flat. It's very difficult to move the share rate too much through the launch phase. And then there's this big jump where it doubles or cuts in half, depending on how you look at it. But then you zoom out 5 years or 10 years, and it's just a little blip. And then
oh, really?
Yeah.
So it just continues to keep going parabolic.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, in the model.
Yeah. Yeah. So
wow.
and it is the whole point of the share rate is that, I can explain this quickly. So the issue that I found, that other people found, but that I made the compelling case for, was a compounding problem. Mm-hmm. That it was more advantageous to end short stakes to compound your hex rather than do long stakes, because the linear bonus of 20% a year can't keep up with the exponential property of compounding, which is an e to the x function. And the way that looks is it looks flat for a long time, but then you start to hit this point where the doubling time is and so then you get, where's my camera? So it's like flat, and then it starts to do this. And the share rate is meant to model compounding, because that's the only way you can do it. The only way that you can beat an exponential curve is to find a way to create an exponential curve without doing the exponential behavior. So share rate is the exponential compounding mechanism. Mm-hmm. So share rate is going to go down. Yeah, share rate goes down as a function, as an exponential function of people ending stakes. So it should not surprise anybody that a doubling early on looks huge, but then when you zoom out and you've doubled 50 more times, it's nothing.
Okay. Wow. Well, you just got I'm gonna get my FOMO jeans on later, because
which really puts
even more bullish on the hex, man.
And it puts a real big exclamation point on longer pays better and early 100%. Pays better, because those who got in.
I wrote the staking guide with, there's like 5 bullet points. Do not miss big payday. Don't miss it. Really don't miss it.
Don't miss it.
Longer pays better, earlier pays better.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's
crazy.
All right. Another question. What about you, Hexo? You got some stuff from the chat room there?
Let me see.
Because I had some.
People are just saying, can you run good accounting for all end stakes at one time? I'm pretty sure you could code it in, but I don't see where you could do it right now.
I mean, it's one transaction per, so you can write a script.
Yeah, script. Yeah, I know, like another hex.win, you can go on there and do the good accounting function.
Yeah,
That's
you
where I
can do
tell
it
people mostly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
on Etherscan and stuff.
Yep.
Um,
I have examples on an Etherscan guide.
oh yeah, that's right. You do. Yeah. Let me see.
With pictures.
So are there any, I mean, I know Hex is done. It's a completed project. It's immutable. I got this question from somebody that says, what are the long-term development goals for Hex and the dev team? Is there anything else that needs to be programmed? Is there anything? I mean, I don't think that you can change anything, but is there anything in the future?
Let me think about how to answer that. So that's tough because there's been a lot of, I mean, the word speculation is kind of overloaded in this case because it's not price speculation, but just musing about things that would be useful for Hex. And a lot of that stuff has happened. So there's like UI nice to haves. I don't know if you've noticed, but the staking page has become much friendlier about dates. So you're not just choosing
that
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one for me. I was
Yeah,
like,
that was cool.
One day off, and I'm like, no, no, what did I do? I have to wait 3 days.
And then it even tells you last day or end day. You're good to close after this day.
Yeah.
Like to me, just the personality of the guy that works on that just comes through to me so clearly. Idiots. This, and then this. Do you need more?
What, you can't do maths right here?
Yeah. So there's like this passive aggressiveness to it that is very endearing to me about that guy.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not. Maybe that was
he was little.
Yeah. So anyway, so that too's funny. So there's UI nice to haves. Everything else, Richard's talked about ad nauseum things he'd like to see with the platform. It's all buildable, and it's probably going to be done by someone else because the main guy is just busy. I mean, he owns a lot on the UI, and there have been some. Let's see. There've been some issues with the way the UI interacts with the blockchain because of changes to Ethereum. I think in particular around block ordering and the orphan rate going up. So there's like hardening things to make the UI more robust. This is sort of all indirect work, and it's a full-time job just by itself. So the things the community is going to build are the things that are going to get built, and they're going to get built on top of Hex. They're not going to augment it. So if folks come up with other UIs, the games, actually, I expressed this idea to Richard. So Hex.business and the Toucan Air stuff, like all those games, these are white label staking services, right? Like these are other front ends to the contract because that's all they do is they create a secondary set of rules on top of the normal rules. So all of that stuff is going to get built.
I'm sorry to stop you again, but I have to because these questions hit me and I will forget them. I will. This one's important because on our show, we've done a lot of talk with the game developers with both the Toucan Air side and now with the Hex business guys. I need to know for the community's sake.
Okay.
When you get in, you just said it's a staking model. So it takes it allows you to stake your coins right onto the contract, just like you would regularly if you went back in there and did it on your own just through the staking tool. And I've seen that on the games. What is the benefit to these game developers? What am I gaining as a user of Hex by going to these platforms and using their games? What are they gaining? What is their gain versus, you know what I'm saying? What's the handoff here as far as I know that there's some risk and there's some game of chance, but what's the benefit of them if there is any?
That's a good question. So they're not all exactly the same, but in general, they extract fees. So, and they just pay themselves directly out of the Hex that you stake. And the benefit to you is that you extract some Hex from people that come after you. So all of the contracts that are modeled on the hourglass function or the proof of weak hands, or I don't know, there's like a bunch of names for it. in general, the principle is they extract fees from everybody, and you extract fees from people that come later or exit earlier.
A Ponzi type deal is what it is.
It's not
And without using that word in a bad way, I mean, it's you're benefiting from the loss of others.
So I guess I mean it in a technical way, that there's not a central mediator who's choosing who to pay. So like Bernie Madoff is a good example of like the quintessential Ponzi scheme, if you don't use the actual Ponzi, where he's taking in all the money and chooses who gets paid and at whose expense. These games are like the democratized version of that you get in knowing ahead of time what you're in for, and just hoping that other people who also know get in afterwards and then exit earlier, and then you collect some of the money that they leave on the table.
Yeah, and for all those people out there on the chat right now that are saying, "Hey, it sounds like a Ponzi," haha. Well, Hex does that too, because Hex pays strong hands from the loss of weak hands. So it's the same rule applies in Hex itself. So just to let all the guys out there know that rule is also embedded into Hex itself.
Right. I mean, when I talk about relative inflation rates, that's what I mean, is that long stakes experience no inflation or even negative inflation. But short stakes who are trying to time the market or whatever they're doing, I mean, there's lots of legit reasons to lock up, collect some inflation, but not keep up with inflation, so to speak, because you got bills or you want to buy a car or whatever. That's the reason that I don't do any of the game stuff, is because I kind of like the rules as is, and I would prefer to take from a system than to take from people. Right. So people who make choices that are different than mine is fine, but I don't want to enter into a system that's like, yeah, we're all kind of competing and this is sort of fun, but it's kind of not going to be fun for you. Right. Fun for me. so I got nothing against them, but it's not for me.
Somebody also asked about the referral system. I know that you obviously can't build on top of Hex. You can't put anything into it, but like the referral system, I don't know if you know of any plans, or what would your kind of your ideas would be after the big paydays over for the referral system to continue. Maybe I was hearing some people saying like even a referral system for Uniswap, but I don't know how that would play out. But
so I actually worked on a contract to do a referral system for Uniswap. The Hex business guys were interested in it, but I don't know if that got sidelined or whatever. But it's not done. It can be done, and there's let's see. So frankly, the games or something like them is like a referral system for staking. And because you are out of the bonus period for Hex and the rules are fixed, there's no way to inflate the currency to pay to pay for that referral. So that is going to come from users. Right. Now the trade-off there is that you have to be offering something that's easier to use, like you have to add value. Or people will just discover the base contract and just interact with that. So that just becomes a business challenge of offering something that is more compelling than the basic thing. And then you extract a little value. I see no problem with that, but somebody would have to build it, and you could probably build a business on it.
Wow. Okay.
And then Uniswap's the same thing. You would have to wrap it and make it convenient or do something to add value. Or someone's just going to discover that there's a UI that just extracts a little less fees.
Yeah.
So like for that, actually, I'll just get into the detail. So for that, you have to wrap the contract to extract some fixed amount of fee. And then you have to make another set of contracts to make affiliates who split that fee and give a discount essentially to the person that's using it. Like to create the referral system that's useful, there has to be some sort of discount or some incentive for the person who's using your referral link, and then an incentive for the referrer. So you have to add a base level of sort of friction to the system that is then overcome by the referral link.
Okay. And it probably, would it come from like a pool? Like, I mean, it would obviously come from users somehow, but.
Yes, in my mind, a staking, so trying to figure out how to adjust my phone so I don't do this. So for staking, it's going to have to come out of Hex. Now, if it were me building it, I would take it out of the return rather than the principal, because that just seems more fair. Like, why should I get paid now, but you get paid later?
Right.
But I can see you doing it either way, where you take 1% of the principal, and then you've been paid as the referrer. But then the person who chooses their stake length, they can end stake, and it's kind of all on them what happens.
Okay.
So that would have to siphon value on one end or the other and be mediated by a smart contract. For something like Uniswap, again, you'd have to wrap those wrap the factory and the pairs contracts with something that extracts a fee, probably an ETH for V1, but you could do it in the native token for V2. This is probably going to be gibberish to 90% of your audience.
Don't worry, it's probably gibberish to me as well.
Yeah. So
but I like hearing it.
Fee, and then an affiliate contract that basically splits the fee, and they take a little bit, and then they refund a little bit to the person who used the link.
Okay.
So you as a dev on the project, you as understanding, if you were to build a DApp or something on top of Hex, what is your mind told you is needed or necessary, or something you'd like to see, or is that something you don't want to divulge yet?
No, I'm happy to talk about it, because I've shared a few ideas that I don't have time to do and that other people haven't done yet. So the first contract that I built that anybody used, and not many people did, I built an AA dollar cost averaging contract. So the first person to interact with it every day enters the lobby on behalf of everyone who's participating, and then you can just take your split of the AA for every day, in the interim. So it doesn't it's not very advantageous to people, because as it turns out, there was this huge ramp up in ETH participation in the AA. The model that I was going off of was the EOS launch, where the first half you were making a killing by participating in their crowd sale, but that you can't predict when that inflection point happens.
Yeah.
As it turns out, it happened very early on for Hex. So that idea is not profitable, but it's useful for people who have to travel a lot or can't participate daily. They can just count on that somebody will, and if anybody does, then everybody does. So for that one, I basically set a budget for how much Hex I was going to buy, and then dumped it into that contract. Again, this is like a trust building thing for me, even though it's not personally the best choice, meaning because I have the free time to do it. It at least tells people, if you're going to participate, I will kick it off with all the money that I'm going to put into this project. Other things, so I forked tornado.cash and then deployed a duplicate set of contracts for Hex, so you can do anonymity stuff. I didn't build a front end for it, but there's like a driver script that you can use that prompts you to enter like what denomination you want to do, and then gives you the receipt essentially, so you can cash it in later. That's a little bit primitive. A couple people took a look at it. There's kind of a skeletal repo out there for it. The idea that's not, for the Hex mobile thing, the idea that's not implemented yet, but that we're going to, is an affiliate program, essentially, so that you can share like QR codes to get into the AA, and then get a cut of people who use it. So that's built. We just need to finish integrating it into the app. Fiat to Hex. So this is the idea that's not implemented yet. There are lots of payment systems that have APIs that will take like credit cards and then send ETH to an address that you provide. Well, there's no reason that address can't just be a smart contract that buys Hex immediately from Uniswap. Right. So like that idea, nobody's implemented yet.
So you're talking about maybe like an onboarding type.
Yeah, exactly. So that you could just say, hey, just give your credit card information, buy $100 worth of Hex. It just boom, shows up in your wallet.
Why aren't more people using that? I mean, I don't understand why it's so difficult to onboard into crypto, when you have some of these tools out there.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm the wrong guy.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you've got like three ways to do it, and or you got to go back alley with somebody and hand over, I mean, it's it's the most ridiculous thing in crypto is how the hell can we just onboard, swipe your damn credit card and get some crypto? I mean, it just doesn't make any damn sense.
Yeah,
Why can't it, like, go to the store where you buy, something like that, and you just want to swipe your credit card? It's
there's
like
a whole rack of gift cards.
Yeah.
Right. You could buy like Kmart gift cards or Starbucks gift cards.
It's it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Or even so, I mean, for those things, at least you can buy something physical or edible. But like, there's iTunes gift cards.
Yeah.
It's digital
Steam.
goods for sale.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
Hey, we got Coffee came and he's sitting in the lobby now. I'm gonna pull Coffee up. I don't know if you've met him or heard of him, but he's one of our smarter guys in the room. So I'm glad he's here because now the two crayon eaters can have some help.
We tried to schedule a live stream ages ago. And it just never.
Hold on a second. Yo, dude, you look like a zombie, man. What are you doing with the lighting there, man?
I like it.
You look like you're walking out of a zombie movie, man.
Well, it is the apocalypse, right? So.
Yeah, I see. He's dressing up for the part.
Kyle, Crypto Coffee. Kyle's here with us. We've been talking for an hour and a half already, but I don't know if you've heard any of it.
No, good to actually meet you in person. It's awesome.
I just spent an hour and a half talking about what an asshole you were.
Oh, that's all right. I get it.
It was really fun.
Like this.
I get that all the time from people on the internet.
Yeah, no kidding.
As do we all.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do something that might kill my stream since I'm on my phone. So I'll be right back. 1 sec.
All right. Oh, yep.
So how you doing, bro?
Good, man. Work is kind of crazy, but holding it together.
Richard says interview with a vampire.
Haven't gone outside in months.
There you go. He's back.
There, Kyle's back.
1 sec.
Can you hear all of us, Kyle?
Got a text. Yeah, Coffee is gone now.
Yeah, he just cut out real quick. There you go.
Close my door. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you're going to rehash any of the questions that we've already, we've gone over a lot of material so far, but you got any questions for Kyle that you'd want to bring up?
So Kyle, you built the whole thing, didn't you?
A day and a half. And then I just told Richard, I don't know, man, it doesn't work. You should
yeah.
ship it.
It was just that ERC20 contract that you can just fork it right there and you can just put it right on the block. That's what I've heard.
It's a crazy experiment. You guys are crazy for that one, but I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Just gonna see what happens.
Yeah.
I hope it works out, dude. I hope it becomes top 1 crypto.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. So this whole thing has been very fun. I mean, right from the jump, kind of all the way through the development process, and then through launch. Like launch day was a big deal.
Yeah.
God, we didn't talk about it too much, but the process of getting audited and then figuring out a launch date was anxiety provoking because it's like, what are they going to find? And then the initial results came back, and it's like, oh, well, this is like nothing. So are we good? Well, kind of. The language is like not great, and so then it just felt like endless kind of iterations to clean up language and clarify things. And I was reintroduced to something that happens in software development a lot, which is it's very hard to get outsiders to ramp up on what the business rules are and what the business case is for a particular piece of software, particularly security people. So they have a specialized set of tools and skills, and they're not particularly interested in your application logic. So there was an enormous amount of effort in getting the auditors up to speed, essentially. Like they said, we think it does this, and this seems like a vulnerability. It's like, no, it's not a vulnerability. That's a feature. Oh. Okay, well, we think maybe there's this. It's like, okay, yeah, let's explore that. Oh, no, that's not a problem either. There was like, I'm trying to think, one of them produced some curve where they're like, hey, did you know that there's like this trade-off in good accounting versus end stake, and like it's not always good to do one? Yeah, we knew that. Well, but on the curve, it's like, you should publicize this. No, thanks. Like, That's not the point. The point is everybody freely interacts, and then whatever
Right.
happens, happens. And if you care to do good accounting or not, then you do that. Or what was another one? There were a few things like that where the security mindset of like, stop everything. It's not going to work because like, no, it was meant to do that. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to, don't stop the presses.
Have you ever ran good accounting on anybody?
I did it for a demonstration. I did a one.
We had a good talk about that.
Stake.
Damn. Yeah, we can see who's bleeding out right now. Actually, it's kind of nice. It's just money going straight into your pocket. So
there was a bunch of 400,000 or 4 million.
You got to watch the stream, bro, because he schooled us on really what bleeding out does to the ecosystem and what it does to the share price.
Yeah.
So we all have our we're thinking, but we might be thinking in the wrong direction when it comes to bleeding out.
Well, in game theory, right? You want to think from a greedy perspective, right? It's all about you. What's best for you.
Yeah, and not letting it bleed out might actually be what's best for us versus letting it bleed out because of what it does to the share rate.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I haven't thought about that.
Just watch the whole hour and a half.
Yeah, we don't want to rehash it again, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that and see what, let you geek on it. Because once you start geeking on something, man, you get into it and go,
Well, so I'll just give you the 30-second version. So the 30-second version is if a stake remains and is bleeding out, its shares are still active. So it's being credited with its share percentage of daily inflation. And if that's substantial enough, say there's only 2 stakes in the system and you each have half, then your stake that's active is getting basically discounted half the inflation for some dead stake that's never going to get paid. So yeah, they're bleeding out, but they're also siphoning half your daily pay.
Yeah, the shares. I didn't realize the shares.
So isn't that one more reason to not run it on them?
No. Because if you don't run it on them, then when you end your stake, the system's going to go back and say, okay, you had half the shares on this day and this day and this day and this day. But it's not checking that the other half of the shares are never going to get paid out because they're penalty days.
It's like diluting your shares, pretty much.
Yeah, so it's still diluting
for that day.
Yeah. Is that you
when they actually don't exist, but they do still exist. So they're
and running good
diluting your
shares out of the system. Out of the
they don't remove.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
And how much that affects it is kind of what's really relevant. I mean, it's what's more beneficial, the bleed or the share rate.
And to get 100%, they have to be in for 100 weeks, right? So they're going to bleed 100 weeks of diluting your inflation payments.
And that's where it could rack up. More shit to think about.
There's a trade-off, right? Is there some kind of break even?
Where's my crayon?
The other grenade that it sort of threw out there is, but on the flip side, if you care about inflation and you want to keep inflation rate low, they will never be paid for those days. So that is inflation that never gets minted because they're penalty days. So it's essentially diluting the total possible inflation.
We got a question for you, Kyle. Since we're talking about this,
build a simulator that tells you when running good accounting makes sense. That's a great question. That's a really good question. That would be very hard to do because of the dynamic nature of the system, meaning that the answer could change from day to day. So on pick a day. On that day, there may be enough unstaked that you and the dead stake make up enough of the inflation pool that it makes sense to kick them out because they're siphoning too much value. But then, let's say 2 days later, a bunch more people stake, and now you don't make up as substantial a portion of the inflation payments. So now it's actually more valuable to you to let that person hemorrhage for a day. And once you do good accounting, you can't take it back.
Can't take it back.
Yeah, so you have to make the decision once. So it's going to be either an estimator, not necessarily a simulator. So you could estimate, given some parameters, I think that staking is stable, or I think that it will only change by X amount. What is the likelihood that it's better to do, a good account or not?
Be blackjack against the house is what it is.
Yeah. So I think when near the beginning of the stream, I said that everything I've done in Hex, I do ahead of time for free. And then if people give me money, then, have at it. I don't want to build that for free or for money.
All right, let me throw this up there just because the man himself is saying it. It says, thus believe
put the first one up there first. He said it twice. He said a first part of that. RG3.
Oh, did I miss it?
Yeah, it's up to.
You only dilute your inflation by the amount it was going to earn. However, they lose 100% of their stack. So if their payout was lower than their total stack, less than 100% ROI.
That's bleed likely. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. And he said that just to preface it, he said it's just actually napkin math that he did on that. So,
yeah, it's hard. You couldn't give a definitive answer because again, it depends on behavior.
That's what a lot of things in Hex are. Is you can't really do all the math. The basic parameters.
Everybody always wants us to tell us what we think what's going to happen by the big payday. It's like, dude,
right?
I didn't see what half a penny already, so I don't know about close to the big payday. So
Richard must have blew up our viewers because we just went up to like 140 something viewers.
So I've given this. There's actually a game theory problem called the El Ferrol bar problem, and the crux of it is there's a bar in town. And if 40% of the town shows up at the bar, they all have a good time. And the people who stayed home have a lame time. But if more than 45% of people show up at the bar is too crowded and it's not fun. And the people who stayed home had more fun. And Hex is a very, very complicated version of that. You have to figure out which group you want to be in without knowing what everyone else's decision is going to be.
What happens if 41% go?
Sorry, I misspoke. It's the same. It's like an inflection. It's not a range.
Okay.
Thank you. Good catch.
I don't know. There's some caveat, like then it really gets lit.
Then it's lit. AF.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The AF. EAF.
That's stupid.
So what happens at the end? What were you like? So at 45%.
So that's a game theoretic problem that's well known, and it's Hex is sort of analogous to that. That you have to decide what you're going to do based on what you think other people are going to do, assuming you're trying to optimize that behavior or your outcome. And if you guess right, then you have a better time than the people that you predicted their behavior correctly. But if you guess wrong, then they have a better time. And you don't really control their behavior. You can only control what you do and what you think others are going to do.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like I see people piling into it after the price goes up really high. Like people were emergency end staking at a moment's notice early on. Like people would just, bail because weekends are everywhere, but the hands get stronger, I guess, the higher the price is. I mean, it's just a total guess.
Yeah, well, so that's we're all just guessing. I don't know why people do or don't do that, but there's a nice property that there's only a couple ways to get more Hex to stake or sell. So once you're out, there's not much you can do to affect the price down.
Yeah, that's what's great. True. I mean, no matter how much you hate it, you're not going to sell it down if you don't have any. And but once you're out of it, though, it's so discouraging to get back in because if you missed out on like 50x, you hate buying at like, let's say 50x higher if you had it 50x lower. If you didn't have it 50x lower, it looks more attractive to buy it after it's 50x higher. But if you already had it and lost it, that pain of loss is still fresh in your mind, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, that's not accounted for in the El Ferrol bar problem. It's just that's a good time or you didn't.
Yeah,
those guys.
That's a YouTube video. Why did I sell my eggs? Why did I sell my eggs?
Is that the Britney Spears meme? The kid crying about.
No, we got this. There's this one
Bye.
guy. He's a dap dude, and he did a YouTube video, and he sold 16 million hex. Like, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks ago. And he's like, why did I sell my hex? It went to here, then it did 10x, and then it went to here, and that ain't the worst part of it. Now it's up here. Why did I sell my hex?
But secretly, it was just like an advertisement for Hex Max or whatever. Like, by the way, check out Hex Max. Yeah,
That's funny.
no, he was hurting. It does suck, you know, if you get shaken out, like you don't want to buy it higher than you sold it again.
Yeah.
Or maybe you did.
Yeah, I think people get really attached to whatever the reality was that they exited at. If they don't. So I have a bunch of friends who are really into investment, and they talk a lot about their investment hypotheses or the thesis. And some of them are very successful because they're able to update that hypothesis given new information. So even something that they thought it was a bad stock, they'll rebuy higher. Like Amazon, did this crazy bull run during the pandemic because like everybody thought, oh, everybody needs Amazon. So folks that were like, oh my God, their earnings per share is ridiculous and they're just way overvalued. They went, oh well, shit, everybody's buying it, so I should probably buy some. They were able to take in new info and update the hypothesis. They weren't stuck on, well, I sold at 1,000 and now it's 2,000, but that's because there's idiots, not because I am the idiot.
Yeah. And we're so early in this. I mean, there were moments already that I was like, I had a stack of ETH and I was like, man, 645,000 hex per ETH. I don't know if I could do that, man. It's got to be better price than that,
Yeah.
And in retrospect, you're like, oh shit. Why didn't I just take a loan out and get some back then? And to date right now, that's what people are going to be saying, I think, about where we're at in this point in time, where this is a bargain right now, because we've already seen, I mean, I have never seen a crypto do this, make a chart as beautiful as this and roll like it's been rolling. I mean, it moves, it jumps, whales come in, they stake. I mean, it's the most oddest thing you've ever seen. Whales usually come in and they leave, in other cryptos. You saw the whale come in and then you started shaking because you're like, oh shit, when do I sell? Because I know he's going to dump. With this, it's like, boom, you see him stake. You go, price is going to level off right there.
Yeah. Stake for 10 years too.
Bitchin' cool.
Yeah.
When's the next pump? Because we know we're not going lower than here. Buy the dip. Better buy the dip right now, and then, there it goes again. And then, he's staked. Here we go. There's a new level.
So the staking is such a beautiful concept. The way that it's
amazing.
Yeah, the way that it's implemented is really great for exactly this reason. So I mentioned that the podcaster Chris Coney that first mentioned this project in 2019 and is what basically pointed me at it. He recently tweeted something about just sort of lamenting that whales create these little rallies in other cryptocurrencies and then happily sell into the rally based on the hype that they generate.
Yeah.
But in Hex, again, one of the beautiful things about Uniswap, you can look at what they do with the proceeds and you go, oh, it's locked for 10 years. Nice. So this is real and you can't take it back.
Yeah.
You can't just sell back into me. So there's a transparency win. Again, is if you're not dealing with some centralized system where people can hide their activity or hide who they are. It's very nice.
It's really nice.
So the only other point that I wanted to make, where you said like in a year or two from now, this is going to be similar to the guy who sold it merely 10x. This is not, obviously I don't know anything because I'm not even a trader, but realize that 100x is 1% of 10,000x. So just based on what Ethereum did, you have 100x this to go.
Right. Now, looking at all the modeling and to put you on the spot, and we hear Richard saying, he built it for 10,000x, and obviously fucking right on time at 100x already in the 6 months the time that it's been around. How realistic do you feel as a dev on the program that 10,000x is attainable. I mean, as we're moving, as you're seeing it happen.
Devs are notoriously bad at estimating. So I would give it 100% plus or minus 100%.
Is it modeling? Is it modeling properly? Is what I'm saying, or is it exceeding modeling expectations?
To give a serious answer, so I never attempted to model price. I don't know enough about it. I think I told you one of the first projects I worked on was an arbitrage bot that just basically did graph analysis. It wasn't even about price per se. It was just, is there a less expensive way to traverse the path from asset A to asset B, going through at some number of exchanges or some number of trade pairs with the sort of weighted directional graph of the trade prices? It's very academic. I am not good at that, or the price stuff.
Well, it doesn't account for like models leave a lot of stuff out. Like you can have a perfect model, but you're assuming so many external conditions are just all met.
Right.
And I don't think anybody's really good at guessing. If anyone tells you they know anything, even within a range, they did a test of like people, there's a study of like, people guessing at what range they think like a certain answer lies in. And they were expected to have a 2% error rate, like give us your 98% confidence interval basically. And what it really ended up being was like a 60% failure to even nail the thing within the range of all of like the people they studied. I probably butchered that, but people are just bad at knowing what they know.
Yeah. So my real life example of that, I was in an engineering course, and it was just like a systems engineering, like physical systems engineering, freshman in college.
Oh,
and they gave us an open-ended version of that question. They said, here's 20 facts. When did Martin Luther King die? When was Gandhi born? Things like that, like with real answers. And they allowed you to state what you thought it was and the over or under, like state your own range. And people still got it 90% wrong. And you could just say from the beginning of time to present for every answer, and nobody did. They just all were like, oh yeah, I'm sure within 2 years it was this.
Yep.
I was like, you could have said 10 years and been right, but you didn't.
It's because of guys like me.
Yeah. Plus or minus 2 days.
I'm always wrong.
Yeah, I got this.
That's why I tell everybody, hey, if I'm buying, just wait. Its price is gonna dump. Just wait till after I buy, then it's gonna dump. Hey, I'll tell you what. Crypto Mom says she wants $1. I'm gonna put her up there.
Okay. That might be the greatest comment I've ever seen in my life.
What's funny is she just said, oh, I like it when you guys don't cuss, and she's throwing shit like that in the chat. All right, Crypto Mom.
So what did the simulators, Kyle, for the simulators? I don't know if you saw any of the Bitcoin free claim simulators, but from what I've heard from Richard is he thought that more Bitcoin people would actually free claim their hex early, and like they're not claiming it as much as they have claimed it so far. And maybe they'll change, but
it's a good question. So my best guess, I ran a bunch of different, we've been kind of overusing the word models, but statistical models of Bitcoin free claims. And we are under where I thought we would be at this point. Because it just seemed like, well, so you talk about models not encompassing everything. I never thought that this project would get the level of unified negative attention that it has.
And that's, in hindsight, I was surprised, but it makes sense. I mean, obviously you can always connect the dots looking back, right? But people are offended by the marketing. People are too stupid to realize that it's meant to suck you in. So they think that like they're being marketed another scam. Yeah. And it's just like, I guess the pain that everyone felt from 2017 is so fresh in their mind as well, that it just makes it really easy to pile on. It's like the popular thing to do now is to, call things out as a scam and not really look into them. Because chances are you're right. I mean, if you throw a dart at a wall in any random crypto, it probably is somewhat of a scam.
1 out of 6,000. Yeah.
And Rich had been wrecking motherfuckers out there too. That don't help none.
Yeah.
Oh, let grandma have her.
I think it's timing too, because all the maxis are like so loving on their Bitcoin right now. They have been so open for this halvening, and after the 2018 crash and everything, they've been just wanting it so bad, chomping at the bit. And now for Hex to be coming out and doing so well, and basically kind of being in the face of all the maxis, this is the timing for it too. I think is the reason for all the hate.
Yeah. Hex also on the Ethereum side doesn't fit into there's a handful of communities. So there's the sort of pure cryptography research community that's doing a lot of cool stuff with either zero knowledge proofs. So they're doing stuff with throughput, they're doing stuff with privacy. It's all very pure and usually done for free, and people release their code in public. There's the DeFi group that I think want to put on the big boy pants and act like this is going to be a replacement for traditional finance, and so they're very serious, capital V, capital S, trademark. And this doesn't fit into either of those, because Richard is kind of a give zero Fs type, just to begin with, and is in a position where he doesn't need anybody to agree or accept his project. And so he's not a traditional finance guy. He's very against traditional finance. DeFi folks want to be in with traditional finance. The academics aren't really in it for profit. This is clearly a for-profit kind of enterprise. It's about price pumping, and it's just sort of nakedly so, which to me is a very realistic position as a person who came in from the more academic side, noticed all the 2017 madness. I think I mentioned my brother kind of asked me about it. He's just a musician, and he's like, hey, so this ICO thing, could you help me set up a website which tell people building a distributed music thing, and then I collect millions of dollars? I could do that, but that's fraud, so I won't.
Yeah.
So there's sort of a naked greed that was obvious in that time that it maybe is reminiscent to people, and so it just kind of rubs the communities the wrong way. And so in a somewhat decentralized way, they've all independently decided that they don't like what the project stands for. It doesn't fit in. It isn't trying to fit in. So there's a little bit of kissing the ring that seems to happen within these communities to get in with them, or show up and give away some of your best stuff before they let you in, like Uniswap or DYDX or some of these other open protocols, or take VC money to get in the club. Again, coming from Silicon Valley, there's a lot of in the club, out of the club stuff that really happens. I've been told that happens on the HBO show as well, and that show is true to life.
Yeah. Well, isn't VC money kind of just like a Ponzi in itself? They keep shuffling seed funding rounds, A, B, and C, until it's just one company giving money to another company, and they're expected to grow so fast. When they can't grow. Sorry,
I'm happy to tell you about this. If
please, if you're closer to it than I am. I'm not that kind of person.
So I came from a Silicon Valley startup. A couple of my buddies started it, and I joined after they got their seed round. But I was in touch with them kind of throughout the process. And apparently, almost everything that happens on the show Silicon Valley is either based on real life or references real things or real places or real people. And that kind of is the culture around VC money. So if you rewind to the 2008 crash and basically to present day, there was very little way to get your money to work for you. So the prime interest rate was essentially zero. So savings accounts pay nothing, CDs pay nothing, bonds pay nothing. The only ways that you could really make money if you are, say, a 401k fund is stocks, or the sort of moon potential of VC money into Silicon Valley startups that get bought by Google or bought by Facebook. So it's all about the exit. Everything that we heard in the time I was at that startup was about building enough traction to get to the next round, which is just, capital infusion to build out your team, to be more impressive, to be bought by Google. Like that was always the end goal, is
Right.
be attractive enough to exit exit via a buyout or IPO. And the IPO times were getting longer because it was becoming more and more attractive to be bought by Google or Facebook, because they were handing out $3 billion checks for the Nest smart thermostat. Coincidentally, I worked with somebody who their husband was the president of that company, and so we heard about it a little bit before it actually happened. And I was incredulous. It was like, $1 billion for a thermostat company? Yeah, because like people's temperature data. Billion?
Yeah.
But yes,
that's
that is the goal. So in talking to my buddies with the startup thing, it was like, I was interested in the technology. I feel like such an asshole for saying stuff like this. Truly, that's what got me to quit a very stable job at Netflix to do a very risky job at the startup. Was a very exciting thing to work on. And in asking them, like, what's the next step? Oh, well, next we have to convince such and such capital firm to give us a meeting, and then maybe they'll decide to give us money. So then we hire 5 guys, so then we can ask for more money to then hire 5 more guys, to then go to someone else and ask them for money to then hire 10 more guys. So yeah, it is like that. It's very disillusioning. I don't know what the verb is. It was a thing that makes me feel disillusioned and cynical. But yeah, it does feel that way. And so the people who took the VC money and are now on this treadmill, essentially, of getting funding rounds, it's very hard to trust their intentions. And DeFi has been co-opted by that largely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got friends that are like Ethereum bros, and they just want funding. Like, they're making these Rube Goldberg machines that, like, quite frankly, I think they all want the mad gains. They just want to dress it up in complexity.
Yeah.
And for some reason, if something is more complex, I guess that means it's harder to understand, so it must be worth more because you can't understand it. It's like, well, if I can't understand it, like, I'm pretty sure it's just hard to understand. Like, I'm not an idiot. Like, I don't know. It's a little
game theory.
Yeah.
Right.
Part of it, you know.
So about 5 minutes before I have to jet.
All right. I was going to ask you one more question, Kyle. What's one question that we haven't asked you that do you see around that nobody really has asked yet about Hex? That, like, maybe you could answer.
All about Hex.
That maybe we should.
I'm feeling.
Yeah. Nobody asked me how I'm feeling. Yeah, like, so about Hex, like,
there is one thing about Hex that I really like, but that nobody asks about, and I even wrote it in my sort of staking deep dive. So the share rate. So the idea of the share rate is that when you exit or when you end a stake, the share rate is computed so that given the same stake length and your new balance, you get the same number of shares. So if I stake for a year and I stake 1,000, no matter how much I make on that stake, the share rate becomes whatever it needs to be for my 1,000 plus interest for a year to get the same number of shares. What this means is that over time, based on penalties, which is an improvement on my ROI than I would normally get, so that's sort of an artificial increase in ROI. And if I have to stake for a shorter length, shares get destroyed and can never be made up. Right? So if I stake for 10 years or stake for 15 years, and I stake for anything less than 15 years, then my shares go down, and I can never make that up. I can never make up the difference. So I plotted this on a chart, and I think I shared it at one point, that the number of shares in the system goes down over time. So over time, the stronger your hands, the more of the system you will have in terms of shares. So there's like a long-term inflation or interest earning potential just by maintaining your number of shares or trying to grow your number of shares and then never letting it drop, or letting it drop as little as possible.
Or even strengthening your positions by a longer stake. So if you were to, say you had a 1 year stake and you unstaked it and you put it back in for 5 years,
So then you get more shares. That's true. And then the supplemental strategy to this, which I wrote about and even modeled, like if somebody wanted to do this kind of maliciously, is create stakes whose only purpose was to end stake early, creating penalties, artificially enhancing the ROI of current stakes, but not future stakes. Because only the people who are staked now are going to get those penalties, and they won't reproduce. Right, because that's an event that can't happen again. I can't ever end stake early again with those hex.
So are you saying that something very beneficial to the ecosystem would be like for some big whale to stake right before the big payday, and then maybe make an emergency end stake and kill that whole stack?
So this was something that I looked at doing, like that whales could do, right? You can dilute the people who you know are going to dump the day after big payday, right? Because we have that chart. We know who is ready to go November 20th. So if you just amp the stake rate, if you're a whale or you have a bunch of liquid hex, definitely get in before big payday so that you dilute people who are going to dump on you. And then you can emergency end stake after that, reabsorb some part of the penalties, or the big whales are distributing part of their penalties to everyone who stayed in. And then they will basically get paid. You have diluted the people who were going to dump anyway. So they have a smaller portion of the total possible hex. And
you send it right back to all the people that believe
his relative position has been strengthened, because now those shares can never come back into existence.
So much game theory.
Yeah, so this is something that nobody has ever asked me about, no matter how much I try to tell them. It's sort of like that, it's like someone who's too nerdy but doesn't realize it, and people are like, okay, dude, okay, thank you.
Well,
their eyes just gloss over. Like
I've never had this conversation. I mean, Hexo and I have had this conversation. Coffee and I have had this conversation. I've had it with a few other, people of intelligence in the community, outside of doing a live stream. And even you and I, Kyle, when we talked for an hour or so before, we talked about it. And it's always been something that's on my mind, because as I'm looking at the game theory here, I'm like, this could happen, and this could really be beneficial to the ecosystem itself and to all the strong hands. And wow, what that would do, what it would do.
Cool. So that's the thing, that there are tools that people don't know exist, or they don't know how to utilize them. So there was, we talked about this also, that you can change what the relative percentage of staked hex looks like through good accounting without actually changing the inflation payments, right? Like you can just stake for a day and then good account, and then the hex doesn't get re-minted, and your shares aren't in the pool. So you're not diluting people, and it looks like the stake rate is higher. So that's a tool. If you want to have what I've called sacrificial stakes, you can do that, and you can improve the share position of everybody who's already in, but not people who come later, or not people who just exited.
Right.
Yeah. Right on.
Well, thanks, man.
Thanks for
thank you for putting the layman's guide and the staking guide, dude. Like, and the dollar cost averaging. Like, that's helped out, like, answering so many questions that I get, or that I'm sure anybody else gets. So thank you for putting those together for us.
Yeah. And the fact that you came into the project and just kind of did it out of the goodness of your heart or whatever. We all appreciate that too, man. And so thank you for being who you are.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hey, thanks to you guys. So this is we're doing inappropriate stuff to each other. Thinking of grandma again. I don't want to. So you guys that go on YouTube, like, this is, nobody sees my face, right? Like, I have a couple of YouTube videos. Actually, I guess somebody merged one as a YouTube ad, but nobody sees my face. I don't shill a ref link. Like, I put it in the documentation that you just mentioned, but it doesn't get any traction, and I don't really care about that. It's just in there, and I'm happy to contribute anyway. But you guys are out there. You're talking about the project, trying to raise awareness, trying to be honest, which is well within the values of the project, as we talked about, and just informing people to the best of your ability, finding people who have the answers to their questions. This is all great stuff. This is the outreach that me as just like a nerdy dev with very little free time that I don't do. I don't do this well. I'm happy to explain stuff. I'm happy to write things down, model stuff in code. But that's kind of where it ends. And that's also why I'm happy to kind of do it for free, because it's interesting to me, and it's not this. Like, this is work.
Right on. Well, hey, any of those charts that you've said that you've posted or whatever, if you can send them to us, and then we can put them on the bottom of this, we'd appreciate that. So anybody has any questions about that.
Oh, thanks, man.
Right on, Kyle. Well, thanks a lot, bud. I think
right,
me and the
care.
fellas will hang out for a few more minutes
Kyle.
and crack coffee on the head.
All right, take care.
All right, bro. Sweet, man. Dude, that felt so good after yesterday to have Kyle on. And not that the guys weren't good. It was just so much to swallow yesterday. It was like, oh my gosh. I would have rather have unpacked Hex like we did today versus trying to unpack something else that's built on top of Hex that we hadn't really had an unpacking of Hex yet.
Yeah. But what happened with Hex.business? I didn't really catch the end of it. Is it what is it? What is that whole thing?
Really? Where's my crayons?
I mean, it's just more of a. It's very complicated. You can get into the AA system as well. Like you can. Yes. They have an app. They have other ideas that they're trying to implement onto it as well. So it's not completely finished yet. Yeah. What I got from it was like you can get the mobile phone. They have a mobile phone app.
Android only, by the way.
Yeah, right now it's an APK only. So it's for only Android. And you can get into the adoption amplifier with it. The referral link, I think, automatically goes to them. But when you get into the adoption amplifier, it mints you not only Hex, but their new coin called Hexy, the HXY. And then somehow that's on their kind of their system that they're building with this Hexy coin. And that's it was really hard. Like it's another Hex like thing, like how complicated Hex was when you first heard about it. It's more like it's like another layer of complexity on top of it. And it's just like, okay, I get.
And since Kyle helped on the project, that just gives it a little more credibility.
And Kyle helped on Hex.business too.
Oh,
so
that's good to know. Cool.
So he helped them to put some of the code together, I guess, or whatever. And
I mean, I get the basics. It's an app, and you can stake, you can enter the AA. But then I go to the website and I'm seeing like debit cards and like HXY, and I'm like,
there's a lot to it, and I'll just tell you that the community, they have a community, and they have their Telegram channels, and they're all very positive towards their project. And every person that I've talked to was very positive, very good at giving me information, getting involved, and trying to get themselves on the discourse syndicate. So it's been, I have nothing but good things to say about them so far. I mean, again, it's, it still has to be revealed how it all works out, because they have control of their own coin at this point, and it's not decentralized, so to say. So there's some risk involved, but I don't think that there's anything malicious going on here, but who knows?
Right. Well, if those guys are willing to go out in public too and talk about it, that's always good in my book. I mean,
and that was another thing. They came onto the stream, but they didn't show their faces. And I understand
a lot of people hated it.
A lot of people in crypto don't like showing their faces. They put a lot of risk out there. They feel, I guess. So I get it. I understand it. But like Hexo and myself, we decided a while ago that, hey, we're not hiding. We need to put a face on Hex. We want to be part of the community, just like you, Coffee. You said, hey, look, I'm going to get out in front of everything and show that I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. And, here we are,
Yeah, man. Well, you really you speak reality into existence. And so if you don't talk about something, you're going to let whoever controls the narrative control the narrative. And Richard does a really good job as a one-man army, but have some more people than just him. It's not.
Yeah,
it's exactly. I'm not going to let guys like Tome Vase freaking run the narrative. And a marble gargler won't see this anyway, so whatever.
It's funny. I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter. What was his name? Crypto.
Oh, Chico
Crypto. Goes on at the Cointelegraph live stream and just calls out everyone for shilling referral links. And he's like,
He called everybody out on stream.
Yeah, which is even funnier because he's in like a dirty bedroom. He looks like a slob. He actually said some real shit, which was like, "Hey, you guys are the ones that are actually scamming everybody, making them lose money margin trading." And they were all laughing at him. Yeah, and they were all kind of laughing at him and like, "Well, why'd you even come on the stream?" And he's like, "I just came on the stream to say, you know,
come to
me on my line. Yeah, come over to mine."
And then he left and said, "Fuck you."
Yeah. I mean, that's like, it's funny because it does seem like there's starting to be a little bit of infighting within the Bitcoin community where now they don't have anything else going on for the next 4 years. So it's going to be like, what do we talk about for the next, and I think that people are starting to realize that now that, the happening is done. Like they had their little party, but it's like, all right, well, I'll see you guys in 4 years because we got nothing else going on there for a while.
They have 40 people on Tone's live stream. And it was like, for what? It was like, what was going to happen?
I don't know. Everyone's talking about, what's your trading strategy? And that's what the conversation tends to gear towards in Bitcoin now. Yeah. It's all about trading, and that's not interesting. I mean, it's interesting if you can do it 24/7, but I really don't recommend it. I feel bad too because I made a video earlier where I shorted Bitcoin SV. And I almost want to take it down just because I don't want to see that and like get totally wrecked. I didn't even like make money on that short, guys. I broke even and I got out.
That's what happens. That's what happens.
Always is, man. Yeah, if I break even, I'm like shaking and shivering until I break even, then I'm out of it.
5 years off my life over here. I'm like, I'm not trying to do that anymore.
I hate it. I hate it. It's just
the trading game is not what I'm like. I mean, I tried it for a couple of years and it was just like I broke even. I literally broke even. I had, a certain amount. And then by the end of that 2 years, I had the exact same amount getting into Hex. And I was like, wow, that was 2 years of my life just gone, man. That was, that's just sad almost.
Well, same here. Same here.
What I don't understand is how in the hell do these people out there think that they're doing a service to the community or to the crypto space itself by promoting trading? I mean, it's like you've got to be promoting something else. I mean, you got, into crypto for another reason, and you're shilling referral links to exchanges and trading platforms, and I mean, it's wrecking people. It's the most, other than Hex, to be honest, it's the most unpredictable asset in the freaking planet. And what makes you think that there are any experts in it at this point with the different fluctuations in the market,
Yeah.
We don't have a crypto Warren Buffett yet,
Yeah, we will. It'll be Richard Hart or something. But I'm going to say, these trading platforms lost a lot of money. Hold on. I had a thought. It'll come back to me.
Yeah, I think that most of those guys, they don't make money off the trading. They make money off of people's referral links. That's it.
Oh, yeah. It was stuff like there's alternative systems now, and everyone's basically advertising you to get rid of your private keys and go give them away to somebody else, which is totally the opposite of what crypto's all about. And like they preach two totally different things at the same time. And so one time, I forgot who was saying it, somebody, I don't know if it was Richard or not, I had some money on BlockFi, which is a lending platform where you put in your money, they pay you 6% per year. And what they do is they lend your Bitcoin out to other people, and they make money on loan and interest payments and stuff like that. So they pay you 6% per year on your Bitcoin. But I didn't even think about the fact that Bitcoin is still something that drops 50% in a day, as we've seen. Yeah. So what if, that could easily liquidate a lot of people at the company to the point where like BlockFi wouldn't be able to pay a lot of these people back. And
there ain't no FDIC on any of this shit, guys.
Yeah. That's a literal exit scam. They're gonna exit scam on just not being able to pay you back. That's a Ponzi, I think, in a certain way. If
all of it is, we're just trading freaking baseball cards. That's it. If you look at crypto as anything other than being baseball cards, you're fooling yourself. I'm sorry, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah,
because it's not real. There's no real use case. I mean, my kids' Kobe rookie cards are just the same type of an asset right now.
That's right.
I mean,
except for that one's physical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's physical. goodness, man.
Yeah.
So was there anything in the chat that we didn't answer? I mean, man, Kyle freaking killed it today. That was so awesome having him on the.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think it's onboarding with those.
Yeah,
Anybody
so
else?
the shares, crypto coffee. I don't know, like if I'm sure you know this, but Kyle talking about the shares after the big payday, how it pretty much goes exponential right after the big payday, and it just continues to go parabolic after the big. Like that sounds insane. Like it almost gets halved. Like you got 93 or 97 million shares per one hex right now after the big payday. I mean, you know, obviously it's speculation, but after the big payday, it'll go like nearly half of that, 48 million for one. So and it keeps going exponential, right?
Because it looks like right now it looks like a steady increase, and I don't think people realize it's exponential. But yeah, it is.
I mean, that basically just doubles the value of your bag at that point right there.
Yeah.
Just
With
instantly.
shares, yeah.
Boom. You know, that's a good thought.
Yeah, I can't wait. Can't wait for the big payday. Are you a crypto coffee? Are you coming to the big payday in Miami if everything's cleared up by then?
Yeah, I'm there, man.
Okay, all right.
If I die, I die. You know,
we're going for it.
I'm going too. I mean, but that's what I want to show this again. We haven't got any donations. We haven't had any referral link hits or anything for the show. So anybody sees value, there's a referral link. There's an address there that you can see. You know, of course, you can just go ahead and watch them, the ETH gather in it or whatever, or the Hex gather in it, and it's going to be given to, you know, the Discourse Syndicate supporters who show up at Big Payday. We're going to do something for you guys there, have a party or bottle service or whatever it might be. But that's what the show is going to do. So if you guys want to donate, and it's the links are down there below.
Yeah, I should probably do that. Where's the link?
Yeah.
Oh, in the description of the video.
In the description of the video, I put it down there. I was going to, you know, start shilling everybody's links and stuff, but it just gets too complicated, and this guy's link on this day and this guy's link on this day. So I just figured, you know what, and we already had talked about it before that we were just going to donate whatever comes into the big payday party. So, you know, Discourse Syndicate, maybe we'll have a big party or something.
Yeah,
have booth babes.
They're all going to be wearing Hex.
So that's the other thing. We need to get some women on the show. I talked to, is she Crypto Grandma? Is that what it is? Or what does she call her? I talked to her, and she said she was willing to come on the show. And there's another gal out there that we don't have too many in there. I mean, it's, you know,
sausage fest, man.
I know. And then the ones that are on, like on Twitter and stuff, they're all like, you know, showing their stuff. You know?
You can do really well for yourself if you're like one of the only girls in crypto.
For real, I was thinking about it. I'm like, hey, wife, just don't say that we're related or anything. We can start just doing this. And
well, it's funny because, like, remember when they were all like, some girl came in the Telegram room, and they were all the guys were like, oh, so they just like pounded this poor girl. She was like, must have felt horrible. Dirty.
It was really a girl,
and that's what I said. So I changed my avatar to a hot chicks picture, and man, it was like the attention I got was crazy.
Yeah.
And it was still my same name.
And girls hit me up all the time on Telegram. What do you mean, guys?
I've
given them my private keys, and then they.
I got lots of Telegram.
Haven't you been giving him your private keys, guys? What the heck?
Right
dude.
on.
Well, cool. I'm probably I gotta go make my thumbnail for the day. So
yep.
Yeah, get working on that.
I gotta get work about it.
All right. Thanks everybody for showing up. Thanks, guys.
Thanks everybody. See you later. Crypto Coffee.
Chat room. You guys have a good one, man.
See you guys.
Later.
Later.